Welcome to Beyond the Arc. I'm John Gonzalez alongside our NBA insider, Bill Ryder. Bill, the NBA is back. It's happening. We're doing it.
It's back. We're back.
We're back.
Let's go.
We are live on YouTube. Beyond the Arc is back. We're going to be 5 days a week moving forward. The NBA season obviously tips off tomorrow night. You and I are going to be doing a bunch of shows together. And then we've got a little bit of a change to the programming format. We're going to welcome in some new, well, not even welcome in, make them more permanent additions of the Beyond the Arc team. Brad Botkin and Sam Quinn have been on the show in and out periodically, and now they're going to join us at least once a week moving forward. So that's exciting as well.
Really excited. Two really talented guys. Sam, they're all great at lots of things, but Sam's so good with the cap. I mean, it's a real skill. He sort of understands how that works. And I'm really excited. I hope he's not watching. I'm going to give Brad such a hard time about the Warriors this year. It's just going to be a constant Friday. He and I just needle the whole season. So tune in for that too.
Yeah, you and Brad on Friday, me and Sam on Thursdays, and then you and I the rest of the week. But it's going to be fun. We're excited to talk basketball. I can't believe it's back already. Felt like the Olympics were just recently, and now the down period is over, and we're ramping up. So we're going to start our new weekly show here, our new daily show, with awards predictions, because it's never too early to be wrong about something. So you and I are going to make all kinds of predictions on the awards. And we're going to start with the MVP. Last year, obviously, Joker won the award, followed by SGA, Luka, Giannis, and Jalen Brunson. Luka's the favorite here at plus 330, Bill, followed by SGA, Joker, Giannis, and Ant are both plus 800, and then Jalen Brunson at plus 1200. How do you feel about this? So you have strong opinions on the MVP?
I kind of do. By the way, I think that Brunson bet, I'm not going to choose Brunson as my likely candidate, but at 12, you said 12-1, right? That's a pretty
plus 1200. Yeah.
If you think the Knicks, I don't want to cannibalize our show tomorrow, and a lot of these picks for me are dictated somewhat by what I think the outcomes will be for teams. Because for me, John, I think there's a difference at the end of a lot of these years in who should be the MVP and sometimes who is. I think narratives carry the day sometimes, and I think there are years where, like the year that Embiid won, your guy, it's not that he didn't deserve it, but I thought he did a great job 2 years ago, kind of setting the stage that he felt like he got cheated out of one.
He was getting close.
Right. And last year, you got to go back to kind of what we expected would happen, right, without giving the same guy the same award 5 years in a row. So with the power of narrative, which I think really matters, and as a voter who's voted before, and I think will vote again this year, try not to fall into this, but I think sometimes you get excited about the new thing, or there's a pattern that plays out. I think voters are probably going to be pretty excited for somebody new and somebody different. It's just sort of, for me at least, look at the landscape. I know we're going to talk Wembenyama. We're going to talk a lot of interesting teams this year when we do our show tomorrow, and kind of maybe get into some team predictions. I think there's going to be some changes in the pecking order in the NBA. And I think some of these emerging stars that we've talked about the last year on the podcast are going to become actual stars. So I think there's going to be an appetite for somebody new, if not the face of the league, the sort of MVP, all of which is to say, I'm going with SGA. And I know it could be close. I know that you were on this team and sort of what they could be. I'm not making any, by the way, I haven't paid this bet yet. I'm not making any more bets with you. Just so you know, I'm going to be my own MVP and not lose any more money to you. Okay, I think the Thunder, like we all do, are going to be the best or one of the best teams in the Western Conference. I think there's some injuries going on, but they're loaded. And to be the best player and the best team in the NBA, I guess unless you're Jason Tatum, I think is usually the surefire way to rise up if it's a fairly open MVP market, fairly open situation. I think it will be. I think it's going to be hard for Joker to get another one. I'm a little skeptical about Embiid getting another one. I think Giannis is interesting. And Luka, for me, he's the betting favorite. I'm just not as high in Dallas, maybe as some other people. And I think the Thunder have the chance to be sensational. And SGA is obviously sensational. So I like Shea to be the guy, but you could throw 7 names my way, John, and I'd be like, okay, I'm here for that argument.
Yeah, I threw 5 names at you. Interestingly, according to the odds makers, Jason Tatum, you mentioned him, not one of the favorites to win MVP. Best team on the best player on the best team last year, and then didn't make it into the top 5. Jalen Brunson squeaked it out, although he was first team All NBA. I'm with you. There's a lot to unpack. I mean, you mentioned Embiid. Last year he was going crazy. I mean, he looked amazing, and then he got hurt again. So I don't think he's going to make the games threshold at 65 games. So I'm going to toss him out. Brunson's a long shot. I'm going to toss him out. I'm with you on the narrative that it's going to be hard. The bar is so high for Joker to win a fourth in 5 years. Only LeBron has ever done that. It's going to be incredibly difficult. He'd have to go gangbusters without KCP. I think, with Jamal Murray, who knows what kind of returns they're going to get on Jamal Murray this year. He didn't look great in the Olympics, and he had a pretty bad, except for 2 shots last year in the playoffs, pretty bad playoffs. So I think that he would have to carry them and end up as the 1 or 2 seed in the West and look really insane for him to win another one. Same thing with Giannis. I just think the bar is pretty high, and the narrative does matter, right? I mean, we came out of the postseason last year where everybody was talking about Luka as the favorite, and he is the money-making favorite on this at plus 330. So I think the narrative really matters there. And then SGA, I like him too, which is why he's probably doomed, because I also picked him.
Yeah.
You and I are here with SGA being the best player on the best team in the Western Conference. And we're going to do our team predictions tomorrow where we go through both.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Breakdown.
It was hard.
It was so hard, especially in the West.
Brutal.
But I have, as a little spoiler here, I have Oklahoma City coming out of the Western Conference, and I have SGA monster year, which is why I have SGA. But Luka's counting stats are going to be pretty silly. I just don't know that the Mavs, if they finish in that 3, 4, 5 grouping somewhere in there, be enough over the hump for him to get it.
I think 3's I know we're going to do this tomorrow, but that's part of the reason I think 3's ambitious. And I think, I'm with you. Look, Luka is obviously like a solid bet in the sense that he's the betting favorite and he's an absolute machine. And there's also the reality, it's hard to envision him having a career without an MVP, right? He's going to get one. And so maybe why not this year? Can I throw, you threw a few names out of there. Can I just circle back on Brunson? Because you kind of dismissed him quickly.
Yeah.
Let's just say the Knicks, let's say the Celtics are awesome, but the Knicks are 1 game better this year. And they are the best team by record, let's say in the East or the NBA. I don't know. I think there's a world if Brunson's awesome. Should you factor in? Should I factor in when I vote? I think we talked about this a little bit a few months ago. He also gave up a bunch of money to bring all these dudes in, right? To facilitate the team. And I think that am I allowed to have that sort of weigh on I think it will if they're awesome.
Yeah. I mean, depending on where they end up in the Eastern Conference, right? I have a hard time believing that the Celtics aren't going to win the East pretty handily again. I don't think that they'll be double-digit games ahead of everybody else like they were last year in the standings. And I do really like the Knicks, and I think they're incredibly deep. Although, that depth took a little bit of a hit with the trade. I just have a hard time believing that the Knicks are going to get past the Celtics in the standings for the regular season, maybe in the playoffs. Yeah. Producer Aaron threw this out. Let me, any hope at all for some of the old guys? I mean, he throws out LeBron and Steph, and I think that that's like a bridge way too far because they're going to be pretty far down in the standings. What about this one? And your mileage may vary on the Suns. I'm not super high on them. I think they're going to be in that 4 or 5 grouping somewhere in there. But let's say that the Suns overachieve, and they're the Suns that that Ishbia and all those guys thought that they could be. Let's say that they end up in the 2 seed in the Western Conference. Now all of a sudden,
2 seed.
I'm just throwing it devil's
My
advocate.
mileage certainly varies in that respect.
I don't think that they'll be this high either, but devil's advocate here. Let's say that the Suns take off and all of a sudden Bud's got them playing really well. KD or Booker?
Booker, maybe. I mean, look, if the Suns finish second in the Western Conference, someone needs to be an MVP candidate. And I suppose my best guess would be Booker. But also, if I dunked a basketball, somebody should celebrate me. I don't think either of those things are ever happening in the history of the world. I'm just, and I am going to see the Suns play I'm going to go to the Clippers game on Wednesday. I haven't been to that arena yet. I haven't seen it. So
You'll have
maybe
to report back. I'm excited for that.
Yeah, maybe on we won't be on the air together until after that game, till next Monday. But maybe after one game, I'll be convinced because I'll forget the Clippers are no good when the Suns win by 14 points and Booker and KD put up 20 or 30. No LeBron, obviously, no Steph, no KD. I think the biggest dark horse I have, and he's not one of these guys, is Tatum, who you mentioned, because I do wonder if the Celtics, to your point, are the best team in the NBA this year again, or the best team in the East. I think they will be. And he goes a little more, hero mode at times. He wants to get, if he's focused on himself a little bit, is there a combination of that and maybe voters feeling like they kind of screwed him a year ago, where he gets the benefit of the doubt if he has a great year? I don't buy it, but I put him ahead of those names you gave me.
What about Ant? I mean, he's
That's a good
23 years old.
Yeah.
He looked great during the summer. He was amazing last year after Cat went down, and both of us, I thought, expected the Wolves to take a little step back, and they didn't because of him. Counting stats wise, he's pretty far behind Luka and SGA and Joker and Giannis, right? But this is another year where maybe he takes another step forward. I think he's probably a year or two removed from being a top tier MVP candidate. But if all of a sudden we'll do the whole what if devil's advocate thing again, if all of a sudden the Wolves are one in the Western Conference without Cat and they go, oh man, yeah, Ant isn't 2 or 3 years away from being the guy. He's the guy right now. Maybe, I mean, he's plus 800. Those odds aren't terrible.
I wrote his name down along with one other guy. I like Ant as a sort of a guy. I think you're right. He's probably a year or two away, but let's say he's, one of the top 2 or 3 scorers in the NBA and Minnesota wins the West. Oklahoma City falls back a little bit, or even there, Minnesota's 2 with no Cat because they can spin it however they want. They shaved money off, right? That was a money saving operation, not a let's get markedly better operation. And maybe if you want to give, the Timberwolves a little bit of the benefit of the doubt. A GM tried to make this case to me the other day. I don't really buy it, but he made the argument when Cat was hurt last year, Ant was awesome, and they were still really good. And maybe they got proof of concept that Anthony Edwards can carry them in ways that we haven't seen yet, and there will be a leap. And so if that happens, maybe. Also, can I just throw out one more name? I think Wemby is also worth keeping a long shot eye on, or at least to sort of sneak into the top 5, because if he has a monster year, and if the Spurs aren't going to make the playoffs, but if they're flirting with 40 games, you could have 8 or 9 or 10 guys that have a legitimate argument, like there were 6 last year, to be in the top 5. Mm-hmm. And I think Wemby could be one of them. I mean, you said Tatum was not a top 5 guy last year. I think there's going to be maybe a handful more guys who are going to be in that sort of realm where they're not really number 1, but they're on the periphery of the conversation.
Wemby is an interesting case because his numbers are going to be gaudy.
Amazing.
But I don't think that the Spurs are going to be good enough to get him into a top 5 conversation. But in the next 2, 3, 4 years, for sure. I mean, we're going to get into more awards.
I know.
I think he's going to be on our list of awards coming up here. We're going to take a quick break. That's the MVP conversation to start this off. SGA, we've doomed you. I'm so sorry. We both like you, which means it's not going to be a great season in Oklahoma City. The wheels are going to come off. But yeah, no, I think that the reasons that we picked SGA make sense. We're going to take a quick break, though, and then we're going to continue our awards prediction show. We've got Rookie of the Year coming up, DPOY, 6-Man Coach of the Year, all that on the other side. You are watching Beyond the Arc.
Get ready to raise your cup to Canadian football's biggest game of the year. There ain't no party like a Grey Cup party. November 17th on CBS Sports Network.
All right, welcome back to Beyond the Arc. John Gonzalez and Bill Ryder on our 5-day-a-week show. You can find us so many different places. You can find, wherever you get your favorite podcasts, please download, subscribe, and leave a review. You can find us there. And if you're listening on Spotify, leave us a comment on this episode. Just look below the play button on the Spotify app when you're in full screen mode and tell us what you think of the show. And leave us a question. As I said, 5 days a week moving forward with the NBA season, tipping off tomorrow night. All right, we did MVP. Let's move on to the Rookie of the Year. Last year we had Wemby. Chet was in it for a second. You and I were trying to kind of make a case for Chet early, and then that was it. Wemby just blew
that evaporated.
Yeah, and then Brandon Miller, I think in any other year, without those 2 guys in front of him, would have had a really strong case. He came on. He was shooting the lights out, especially with LaMelo down. He looked really good. This year, there's a pretty heavy favorite in Zach Edey at plus 290. After that, the top 2 guys who were picked, Reece Shea at plus 700 and Alex Sarr plus 950. Reed Shepherd's in there plus 750. Stephon Castle at plus 1,000. And then Dalton Connect at plus 1,600. Bill, I don't know if you saw his preseason game the other night.
I did.
He went absolutely lights. I watched that. This is what a full life I lead. I was like, you know what? I'm going to watch the entire Lakers game with no LeBron and no Anthony Davis. And I'm glad I did because Dalton Connect went bananas. And I think he's going to be a really, I don't think he's going to win Rookie of the Year, Bill, but the way that JJ wants to play, Redick was talking about how he would like them. And this is absurd, but not surprising that JJ wants them to shoot more 3-pointers because I believe they were 3rd to the bottom last year in 3-point attempts per game. He wants them to shoot 50, 3-pointers per game, which, by the way, would be first in the NBA by a lot and significantly more than they shot last year. And I don't think they got the people for it. But my whole point of this was Dalton Connect, if he's a regular rotation player, and I suspect he will be because they need threes, he's going to be jacking up a ton of threes.
He's an interesting bet, and you get that Lakers shine. I mean, from a gambling perspective, if you're out there looking, I mean, if the guy puts up numbers and he gets he'll get more buzz than some guy playing whatever in Detroit. Yeah, he went NBA Jam mode. Remember NBA Jam, where like
I love that
fire would literally come out. I think he scored 20 straight points, didn't he, in that game?
He scored their last 20.
Crazy, last one, yeah.
And he had a couple of threes that he rose up over Bol, and I was like, how's that even possible?
Let me ask you, since we're talking Lakers, I'm going to ask you a question.
Okay.
Not serious about it, but I want to know if I had done this, just how much you would have openly loathed me on our return podcast. Because I was thinking about just to mess with you, but I don't want just like when we with a straight face when you asked me who I had, go, I think it's going to be Bronny, and then just try to keep the.
So I didn't throw Bronny. I like that. The commitment to the bit would have been good. I didn't put Bronny on there. Apparently, there's a lot of money coming in on Bronny for this thing, and I want to know
waste of money.
Who these people are and why they haven't sought help. I would imagine, like hardcore gamblers / like the Venn diagram of hardcore gamblers and like unrepentant Lakers fans, and it's just a circle.
Can I give a third one?
Sure.
I have a bunch of buddies I have like 3 buddies of mine that I play tennis with who haven't watched sports their whole lives and are suddenly into sports now. And in the last 3 months will send me the dumbest, I hope they're not watching this, they're not, text message like, man, you know the Chiefs are good? Or, whoa, is LeBron not the best player in the world? Also on the Venn diagram, these guys. These dudes who end up in Vegas are like, oh, I better become a sports guy at age 45.
Maybe not paying attention to it. Just as a side little Bronny thing, and we'll definitely break down the Lakers' first game tomorrow night on Wednesday. Do we anticipate that Bronny will play tomorrow and they'll get the Bronny and LeBron thing out of the way?
I think I'm going to that game, TBD, but I'm scheduled to go to that game. And it's interesting. I did a bunch of reporting last week, and including I'll do more today, just trying to talk to real NBA executives who've actually scouted Bronny, right? Who have actually scouted themselves or at least have put time in. And the negativity is shocking. Like some of the quotes I have from people are pretty, like one of the quotes I think was, I don't have my notes open, but was some version of he'll struggle in the G League. And then Friday happened, right? So there's just, and I hit these guys back and they're like, no, my mind hasn't changed. Like it was so I hope so, because I want to get the Bronny thing out of the way. I'm also just really curious to see quickly whether when it counts, he belongs at the NBA or not, because there are still people there's obviously a level of disagreement about that.
I mean, Redick talked about this during the offseason. I believe he was on Zach Lowe's podcast, and he said we're going to get it out of the way sooner rather than later. My anticipation is they get it out of the way, and then he just spends a lot of time in the G League, right? I mean, as well he should. Yeah.
He needs to. Do you think they do it tomorrow and not Friday? Just get it done, opener, get him out there for 5 minutes, whatever. Yeah,
pull him out there. You pomp and circumstance, and they get it out. Like LeBron is asked about it afterwards. Bronny's asked about it afterwards, because this is a main narrative for the media. We all want to talk about it. And then you go, thanks so much. Off you go to the South Bay Lakers. Have a great time.
I think you're right.
So who do you have here for ROI? I mean, because I think it's a pretty open race. I'm my favorite. Who do you have?
So I did not look at the odds on purpose when I did these, and I want to sort of compare. So, but on this one, I went Zach Edey, and some of that again will come up a little bit tomorrow. I just think, I think people forget how good that team's going to be. That team is going to be, I think, very, very good, and he's going to have a role, and he's going to have an impact. But it's the easy. Also, it's a pretty weak class. It's there's nobody else. Did you go somebody else? Because a lot of these guys are raw. They're raw. These are raw play. Not a lot of immediate contributors.
Continuing the Beyond the Arc curse, I also have Zach Edey.
You do?
Yeah. So
I have Bronny.
You and I, you have Bronny.
Yeah.
You and I talked about it during during Summer League, where I was pretty much out on Zach Edey going into the draft, and then watched one game of him during Summer League and was like, I'm in. This is your rookie of the year. He can move a lot better than I anticipated him moving. They were looking for a center to pair with Triple J, Jaren Jackson Jr. After moving Adams, and now all of a sudden, Steven Adams is gone, and you're going to need somebody to suck up those minutes. Here's the other thing. rookie of the year, a lot of the time comes down to opportunity, games played, and minutes, right? And like, okay,
Yes.
Reece Sachet should get some minutes. I think Alex Sarr is going to get a ton of minutes. Reed Shepherd, I think, is super, super talented, and I loved what he did during Summer League. But the problem with Reed Shepherd is
you love Summer League.
The Rockets
You're
are deep.
So swayable.
I am. I'm super swayable.
I love it about you.
I'm easily influenced, but Reed Shepherd can shoot the ball, but I just don't know. You know, if he plays 20 minutes a game, he's not going to be rookie of the year. Dalton Connect, you know, we'll see what kind of rotation minutes he's getting, but I would anticipate he's going to be, you know, their 6th, 7th, 8th guy. That's probably not going to be enough. I think it's Zach Edey because he's going to be a starter and suck up a lot of minutes.
I think that, I mean, you said it. He's going to get minutes. He's going to put up some counting stats. As you noted, there's a need. Like, they drafted him for, it's a perfect fit. I think barring an injury, there's a reason the guy is the betting favorite, because it's hard to even look at anyone else in terms of opportunity meets readiness and say, oh, that guy's going to be able to sort of simulate or be in the range of what Edey's probably going to do. This one feels easy.
Yeah, I think so too. Before we move on from the rookies here, producer Aaron has a little fun game that he'd like us to play. Bronny over unders. I'll throw out some over unders for you, and you tell me if Bronny hits the over on any of these. Points per game, 3.5.
As an average over the course of the year.
In the NBA, not the G League.
Right. So like so this is like he'll average more or less than this over the course of the season.
Yeah.
Under.
Games played 34.5.
I mean,
checks into 34.5 games over or under.
So I have asked some people I've asked people, is Bronny going to actually spend time in the G League like he should? Or is LeBron going to want him? I mean, LeBron wants to play with him. So I can't rule out that he wants him on the plane, and that experience, like how much are they going to, for lack of a more sensitive way to put it, undermine Bronny's career further to satisfy what his dad wants? So that's a really tough one. I'll go under, but I wouldn't be surprised if Bronny's there a lot more than he should be.
I'll go under too, because games played, I mean, it's if he's on the plane, but he's like the 12th guy, he's not checking in. He's just sitting there and like hanging out with his dad. I'm going to go under on that one. Most minutes played in a game, 13.5.
That's most minutes.
Yeah.
That's a great. I'll go over because
I'm going to go over on this too. I think eventually there's a garbage time game.
Right.
You know, they like either they're blowing somebody out or they're getting blown out, and they just let him play the 4th quarter. You know, maybe he had some extra minutes earlier. I'll go over on that one. This one's pretty low too. Highest scoring game, 7.5.
Oh no. That's his highest scoring prop.
Yeah.
Under. I'm going to fade all the Bronnies.
You're going under?
Guys are going to this is obvious, but another scout said this to me. Guys are going to punish him because of how he got to the league and who his dad is, in ways players that could never, ever go at LeBron are just going to take out whatever they feel about LeBron on his kid. I think it's going to be, no one's going to want to get scored on by Bronny James. Under.
I'm going to go over just because of the garbage time game where we said, like, okay, if he goes over 13.5 minutes in the game, that's a blowout. Maybe he just gets some junk time scoring.
He can't shoot.
No, but some layups,
and
maybe.
He's small.
But other than that, I think his career is going to be fantastic. Last one for you. Total minutes for the season in the NBA. Once again, not the G League. 110 minutes and a half.
That's the total minutes?
Yeah, 110.5.
Well, you've got him hitting more than 10% on his one junk game. One junk game. I don't know, because again, I think that I'm trying to apply rational logic, and I don't know what the person in charge of the front office and the coaching staff for the Lakers, LeBron James, actually wants to do here. Yeah, I snuck that joking. It's okay.
I like it.
No, it wasn't good. I'll go under, but I'm not. Again, I just don't know what LeBron's plan. You going under?
He gets that one. I'm giving him that one junk time game and garbage time game, and then after that, he's sitting on the end of the bench. Look, just go play in the G League. It would be much better for you. All right, moving on to a couple of the other awards here. Let's do Defensive Player of the Year. Last year it was Rudy again, won his 4th, followed by Bam and Wemby. Wemby heavy favorite here, Bill, at minus 155. Everybody else, you got Chet and Bam both at plus 1,200, Evan Mobley at plus 1,400, which I think would be a good bet if and when they move Jared Allen. But with Jared Allen there, I'm not crazy about. Rudy Gobert, the disrespect continues. This is your reigning DPOY. He's plus 2,000, and then you got Triple J at plus 2,600. But everybody anticipates it's going to be Wemby.
Triple J is interesting, actually. I wrote down Wemby in the least creative, least sort of dangerous. This feels like last year's Rookie of the Year, but more certain because we've had proof of concept. Like what we thought we knew about Wemby a year ago, we actually know. He was the best defensive player in the game the last few months of the year. He's winning the award if he's healthy for me.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, we've discussed this. I don't think he's just winning it this year. I think pencil him in for the next 5 years more. I mean, barring injury. Barring injury. I mean, he is such an alien on the court and he can do so many different things. But defensively, I mean, we saw it last year. If it wasn't for the fact that it was his rookie year, he probably would have won it last year too. But Rudy, he anchored the best defense in the NBA last season. He's got a kid behind him. It's kind of, I think the narrative matters as we were discussing, where you go, all right, it's going to be Rudy this year. He's the best defensive player on the best defensive team, kind of like what we discussed with the MVP. And then for the next however many years, it's going to end up being Wemby. I'd be shocked if he doesn't win it this year.
I agree. By the way, we didn't bring up, you mentioned Castle in the Rookie of the Year. I think he's going to lift so many boats. I just think that rising tide, I think the Spurs are going to be better than people think. And I think the way that they're going to exceed expectations, they're not finishing, they're not making the playoffs, but I just think everyone's going to be a little better. He's going to make a leap. The spotlight's going to shine even brighter. He's going to win these awards because he deserves them. And he's going to win these awards because I think people are going to be fairly legitimately correctly in awe of him and trying to figure out what they can give him before they can give him the actual MVP.
Minus 155, and the next best odds is plus 1,200. I mean, that's a massive gap.
I don't want to do this or put in the universe, but for those that are actually, and I can't bet on it, but those that are actually gambling, if you think Wemby could be hurt, right? If you think that is, there's some value.
Put the hurt component to the side, right? Let's just do like of the other guys. What do you think the best value is? Because like I said, you got Chet and Bam both at plus 1,200, Mobley at plus 1,400. Again, the Jared Allen thing gives me pause there. Rudy,
I like
you're
Mobley.
Defending DPOY at plus 2,000 and then Triple J at plus 2,600.
I like those last two guys.
You like the last two?
I do. I mean, I guess the question becomes, has the narrative so shifted on Rudy Gobert and how many he's won and how much it's clearly pissed off contemporary colleagues? Does that influence voters? I think it does, even though it shouldn't. So maybe I'll go. Like, I think Chet's really interesting. Like I think people are going to be watching a lot more of these games, which look, NBA voters don't watch every game. And so there is this sort of impact when you watch more of a team
and no Hartenstein to start
about it.
The first month and change.
Good point. Yeah.
But you also have, I mean, that team, I think that team is going to be pretty safely the best defensive team in the NBA this year because they got better. They added Alex Caruso and Hartenstein will be back eventually. And really like 1 through 6, like with Kason Wallace too, like they have no weak spots defensively 1 through 7. But does that help or hurt Chet? I wonder.
I think it helps. I think if you have the counting stats, which you will, and you are regarded as a top, 5 defensive player, and you're on the best defensive team in the NBA, it helps when I'm voting. I think that is a significant. Yeah, I give you credit if you're the best. Just like the best player on the best team has a good shot at MVP. If you're not Jason Tatum, the best defensive player on the best defensive team to me has an impact as a voter.
Are the odds makers in this case sleeping on somebody that we did not mention? Not mentioned here.
Producer Aaron's like, what the hell?
Yeah.
Producer Aaron's like, what the hell? Every year I go to do this voting, and every year I'm like, oh, Anthony Davis. And he ends up
really
somewhere
good.
Right.
He's really good last year.
Are you able to make him a legitimate candidate if you don't think that the Lakers are going to be a good team defensively? Do you think the Lakers are going to be a good? I don't.
So we're going to do our team predictions tomorrow, and I really struggled with the back end of the Western Conference.
I can't wait to show you what I did in the West.
I really struggled with the back end of the Western Conference, and part of what me struggling was the Lakers, because I keep coming back to this. they have 2 all NBA players on that team. Generally, if you have 2 all NBA players on a team, you should be pretty good. And yet with the Lakers, nobody knows what's going to happen because the Western Conference is so stacked. How many games are you getting out of LeBron and AD? Last year, they were healthy. AD played the majority of the games for the first time in a while, looked amazing, had a fantastic season, but they just both came out of the Olympics too. Are you getting 70 something games out of AD this year? And if you're not, then I have a harder time believing that he's going to end up in this mix.
There's and Aaron points out, and this was a big talk last year, Wemby was not on a top defensive team last year, but they're also the Spurs. So I think you get like a little bit of credit for everything Wemby
and his
did,
numbers were ridiculous. I mean,
yeah.
You're grading on
Look,
a curve there.
AD, if you think it's not going to be Wemby, Anthony Davis is an interesting bet, but I think Anthony Davis is the guy that perennially finishes in that sort of there's only 3 guys that get on the list, but 2 to 5 spot where you're either a finalist for the award or you're all NBA defensive team, right? Somewhere in that range, but not quite number 1.
Yeah. So we've decided it's going to be one. You and I, by the way, now have agreed on all 3 of the awards we've done so far.
You screwed everybody.
Lock. Absolute guaranteed lock. All right. One more break. And then on the other side, we will continue with our awards prediction show. We've got 6th Man of the Year coming up and also Coach of the Year. This is Beyond the Arc.
Welcome to JJ's.
I'll have wait, there's no way I can get a burger?
No chance, but you can have the NFL on CBS streams live on Paramount Plus. Oh, hang on. There's a toy.
All right, welcome back to Beyond the Arc. John Gonzalez and Bill Ryder here on our first of our 5-day-a-week shows that we're back to doing. As I mentioned, we're a podcast. You can find us wherever you do those. And also, you can find us on YouTube. If you're watching us live on YouTube right now, fantastic. If you're not, come join us. We'll be live most mornings around, noon Eastern time, 9 a.m. Pacific. Our YouTube page is at Beyond the Arc CBS. Please hit the like button, leave a comment, and subscribe.
Oops and perfect combo.
That's right. Fantastic. We're very excited about this. 6th Man of the Year, Bill. Last year, Malik Monk was cruising toward it, and then he got hurt at the end of the season. It was his to win until it wasn't, and then Naz Reid ended up scooping that up from him.
Your guy, Naz Reid.
Naz, and I believe, Bill, this season with Cat out and Julius Randle in. Julius Randle is a usage monster and like dominates the ball. I just think that what we saw last year when Cat went down, like the Wolves went, oh, Naz is really good. He might not be as good as Cat, but he might be like 90% of Cat. So we can move on from Cat because we already have Naz. We'll just give him more minutes. I like Naz this year. Not for 6th Man of the Year, though. Favorites here. What do we got? We've got Malik Monk at plus 550. He's the favorite to actually win it this year, followed by Naz at plus 1,000. Jaime Jaquez at plus 1,100. And then for some reason, the odds makers have CJ McCollum on this list at plus 1,500. Maybe they know something I don't. I thought he was going to get starters minutes, but perhaps he won't. What do you like here?
I like that I maybe should start looking at the odds so I stop picking the favorite. I took Malik Monk, and there's still some talk, by the way, about him starting. I don't think he will. I think he'll be exactly what he was before with that new contract. For me, it's Monk. I think Jaime Jaquez is really interesting in Miami. Like sort of what's your temperature on the Heat, and how do you think he had a bit of a slump last year at the end? But I like him as a player, and I like him to make a nice leap. But I went Malik Monk. It's very easy. It's very basic. I just think he gets paid. They get to keep him. It's good feelings. I think Sacramento's kind of interesting this year, and there's a lot of pressure for them to try to cut through a little bit, and he's a big part of that. So I think all the ingredients are there for him to get the award he would have gotten last year, and probably should have if he'd been healthy.
I think he's a really safe bet, a really smart pick. I love watching him play. He's instant offense. That team is really fun when he comes in with the second unit. Anytime you need a boost scoring wise, when maybe the first unit doesn't really have it going, and in comes Malik Monk, and you're like, man, that guy plays like 1,000 miles an hour. And like, also, I like his career arc because early on in his career, he looked like a bust.
He did.
Like a guy, right? I mean, like he did not look good. And then all of a sudden he goes to Sacramento, and Mike Brown is like, hold on. Whatever happened earlier, I can see the promise in you, and you're going to be my guy off the bench to give us that offensive boost. And it's a perfect home for him. Perfect fit. He got paid this offseason. I like that pick for you.
Can I tell you why he's a great guy? I have a Malik Monk story why I root for this guy. So I lived in LA for like 7 years, where you and I are now. and I would go to these events and I would just dress in my suit, right? Because there's no weather. I never sweat, right? You just perfect weather. I moved to New York. The first work thing I do is I have to go to some Rolex or some store uptown. I live in Brooklyn to meet Malik Monk and some other players and hang out. Not even thinking. I don't know how this works. I put my shirt on. I put my sports coat on. I go to the subway. Turns out it's 110 degrees as you wait for trains on the subway.
Sure.
I get to New York. I have to climb stairs. I get to the Rolex store. I'm covered in sweat. My shirt is a white shirt. I have to like button it so I don't look in a.
Yeah.
No one will look at me, right? No one will even make eye contact. And Malik Monk's like, dude, you look. What's up, man? You look good. And I'm like, bro, we both know. I tell him what happened. He's like, oh, it happens. And we like hung out for an hour. He was such a sweet dude. So. I not that that's going to make him the sixth man of the year, but it may influence my vote if it's close.
Yeah,
nice guy.
You want good things for nice people. That would normally have been my pick. I'm going to go a little off menu here, because I think Malik Monk is the favorite to win this, and he should have won it last year, as we mentioned. I'm going to go Dante DiVincenzo plus 1,300.
Oh,
I think there's just so much opportunity there for him. He comes over from New York. You saw, I don't know if you saw, but I'm guessing you did see.
I did see. I loved it
when he was mouthing Tibbs and Brunson's dad, and he's getting a little chippy. I think he's got that chip on his shoulder. He always has. He plays with a little bit of an edge. I like that. And there's just six man, especially for the Wolves. They're going to need a lot of offense with that second unit, and he's going to have all the shots that he can possibly handle. He's already a gunner to begin with. At plus 1,300, there's some nice value there.
And again, going back to the narrative idea and the notion that he kind of gets cast off from the Villanova Knicks and he goes to this team that has expectations, and if they're really good and he's dynamic and he plays that role, I think people are going to want to vote for him. I like that pick.
Yeah, I think that's a fun pick. Producer Aaron says maybe the Pelicans might be going with Trey Murphy since he got his rookie extension, and that, CJ might. And you know what? Actually, from like a fit standpoint, that would make sense. I just wonder if like Willie's actually going to do that, because CJ is an established veteran and you do get a lot of offense from him. But from a basketball perspective, that would make sense if they move him to the bench. Let's go to Coach of the Year here. Last year was Mark Daigneault, then Chris Finch, and Jamal Mosley with the Magic.
The favorite again. If I have the favorite again, I quit.
This year, Tibbs is the favorite at plus 700, followed by Taylor Jenkins at plus 11, Joe Mazzulla plus 12, Willie Green, the aforementioned, plus 1,200, and then Jamal Mosley coming in at plus 1,400. And we should mention Ime Udoka at plus 850.
That's a good pick.
Who do you like?
I have Taylor Jenkins written down, and
it's a good one.
And I brought that team up a few times. I've said this. So we have people forget, right? Just the immediacy of something that's not in your sort of field of vision. You just forget it exists. It's a really good basketball team. There's obviously some issues they have to navigate. I mean, John Morant, don't be a knucklehead. I think
all of their health, everybody, everybody, Triple J, Marcus Smart, that whole group.
Love it when my buddy calls me during the show instead of watching the show. Reed Forgrave,
tell him to join us on YouTube.
You're a bad friend.
Yeah.
You're a bad friend. You should be watching this live. I think this one is wide open. I'm a little skeptical about Mazzulla. I think it's really hard to come in as the coach of the defending champion, and maybe history will prove me wrong, but as a voter, like I want to see surprise, improvement, return to excellence, right? Things that are a little unexpected. So for me, Jenkins has a huge challenge because they return as the team maybe they were, but to a much harder, much more brutal Western Conference. And if he can still navigate that to me is a pretty serious accomplishment. Tibbs is interesting, right? Because like the thing is, I think it's actually Leon Rose. I always separate these. Like if the Knicks are amazing, it's more Leon Rose's executive of the year, which we don't vote for, Reedy doesn't vote for, than it is that Tom is the coach of the year. Although I guess if he understands that he can, if he actually has rotations that make sense and limits minutes, and OG plays 28 minutes sometimes because they're saving him, and maybe he'll change my mind. I just don't think he's capable of that.
I don't think he is either. I understand why he's the favorite. I think, excuse me, as I die on camera here, I think that
don't die on camera.
I think that a lot of the time with Coach of the Year, it ends up being the coach of the team that surprises the most. I have something in my throat, and it's really bad. You talk for a second. I'm gonna drink some water.
So look, I'm gonna try to like guess who your surprise team is. Mike Brown. Is that poor John? There's nothing worse than hosting something and then you start. I once started choking on a subway in New York City and couldn't stop, and it stopped over the Brooklyn Bridge. And it was so bad that 3 people brought me their water that they had already drinking from, and I'm a germaphobe, and I drank all of it down. There's nothing worse than when you just can't get the air.
I'm getting over some. So I had been, during our little downtime, I had been in the UK watching soccer, and I was fine. I was fine the whole time. I was standing in the rain most days, like watching matches, right, and drinking pints, and I was totally fine. I got on the plane. Everybody on the plane was coughing. I was out for like a week, and I'm still getting over that. So it reared its ugly head at the worst time. As I was saying,
thought you were getting emotional at the NBA being back.
A little verklempt because the NBA is tipping off again. As I was saying before I died, the coach of the year tends to be, thank you, resurrected like a phoenix. The NBA coach of the year tends to be the coach of the team that surprises the most, right? Like last year, Dagnall won it because all of a sudden OKC took that leap and everybody was like, that's amazing. Jamal Mosley, Chris Finch there in the running because the Wolves and the Magic exceeded expectations. The Tibbs thing would make sense if they're like really on the heels of the Celtics. Beyond that, though, I think the Taylor Jenkins pick makes a lot of sense because, they could potentially be resurrected as well. I want to circle back to what you said about Joe Mazzulla and the Celtics. I almost think it's the opposite with him because under normal circumstances, you're right. The coach of the defending champs would get like no love on this kind of thing. But Joe Mazzulla started out with no love. There was a moment there after he took over for Udoka where people were like, is he even the guy? He was on like a temporary, he was the interim coach and they didn't know if they were going to extend him. And then they made him the full-time coach and still people were like, he's a little weird. He sits with his back to the wall. So he can see people walking in and he doesn't use revolving doors because there might be a hit out on him and he watches the town 47 times a week. Now, though, he's won a championship and people I think are starting to come around to like, Joe Mazzulla might be quirky, but he also might be good. If they end up running away with the Eastern Conference again, maybe.
How many games does he have to win for that to be 67 games?
60, 60 something, north of 60.
I think it's high 60s for me. It's so these awards are actually hard to navigate how to do them properly sometimes because how do you separate the coach from his roster, from his stars? Do you give a lot of executives of the year will win sometimes for stuff they did 3 years earlier that comes to fruition? Coaches never get credit for the players that they kind of grow or the culture they set from 2 or 3 years. Like, I don't think Eric Spoelstra gets the love he deserves.
Eric Spoelstra is a perfect example, never won it. And he's one of the best coaches of all time.
If you took 100 experts who actually knew what they were talking about, or 30 media people, 30 players, 30 and you had them do top 3 coaches in the NBA, how many of the 100 would exclude Eric Spoelstra? 5 people? I mean, he is a lock as a top coach in the game.
Yeah, he's fantastic. And not on this list. Also not on this list, Bud. He's somebody who, if we, in that alternate universe that we discussed earlier in the show where KD or Booker is maybe in the MVP conversation, if they do end up as a top, 2 seed, again, I think that's unlikely. I'm not that high on the Suns, especially after what happened last year. But in this alternate universe, if that happens, that would be a surprise. And you could see a narrative building around Bud where you're like, look at this. Vogel, I thought, got way too much blame for what happened with the Suns last year. But if all of a sudden they look like a really good team, like Ishbia wanted them to be, then all of a sudden you could see that building. I'm going to give you mine. I'm going with Udoka because, I love the Rockets. I'm very high on the Rockets. And again, to the surprise narrative, right? If the Rockets go from a team that missed out on the playoffs last year to a high play-in team this year, which we'll discuss tomorrow when we do our team predictions.
It's possible.
It's possible. Udoka is plus 850. He's second on the board after Tibbs. I could see that narrative developing where all of a sudden everybody's like, man, Ime came in and he took this team that doesn't have like the one guy on the team where you go, that's his team. Instead, they've got like 7 or 8 guys and he figured out how to use them all. I don't think
it's outrageous. I think 6 or 7 in the West to 12, or depending on where you are on the Clippers, 13 is kind of interchangeable. I mean, so Houston, by the way, but any of those teams that if they really surprise, if a team that most of us think will be 9, 10, 11 ends up, 6 or 7, that coach is going to rightly get some love.
Yeah. All right. So those are our awards. We're going to do first team all NBA to wrap up the show as well. Last year, Bill, It was the same as the MVP voting, with the exception of swapping out Brunson for Jason Tatum. So it was Joker and SGA and Luka and Giannis, and then Jason Tatum instead of Brunson, because Brunson was top 5 MVP, and then they kind of sort of flip-flopped him for all NBA. I'm going to do the exact same thing this year, except for I'm going to lop off Jason Tatum at the end, and I'm going to put Ant in.
Okay. I'm going to go similar. I'm going to go, obviously, we both have SGA as our MVP. So SGA, Joker, Giannis. That's 4.
I mean, Luka just keeps making it. He just makes first team all NBA. I'd be shocked if he doesn't make it this year. Yeah, that's 4 now.
Luka, Giannis, SGA, Joker, and Wembanyama. I'm going
Wemby first team in his
you
second
put him
year.
Third
I know,
on
it's
your
amazing.
top 100 list.
I know.
I'm here
I did.
for it.
I love it.
Look, we're gonna hit more of this tomorrow, and I am all in on the impact, not just his individual excellence, his impact, his value. I think they're going to exceed. Yes, I think he's going to be Defensive Player of the Year by a million miles, like we talked about.
Yep.
I think he's going to be not an MVP per se, but I think he'll be on the sort of, when we're filling these ballots out, you got to figure out who the hell is 4 or 5. There's going to be 8 guys, and he'll be one of the 8. I think he's going to be. I'm going to put him on there.
You know what? You're making a really good case, and you're using my own logic against me, because when we did our CBS Sports Top 100, I was the highest of all of our NBA analysts. I had Wemby as the 3rd best player in the NBA.
And I thought I was crazy.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, I look at what he can do, and I'm like, who would I rather have over him? And the list gets real short, real fast.
Yeah.
And you make a really good point about if he's going to be Defensive Player of the Year, and we believe that he will be, and the odds makers certainly believe that he will be. That's already a huge component, right? And now you look at his offensive numbers, his counting stats are going to be through the roof regardless. If he can improve his 3-point shooting, now all of a sudden it kind of becomes a little undeniable, where you're like, the numbers are just too good. You're kind of talking me into him being first team all NBA. I think he's going to make an all NBA team. The voters, I think, are going to lag behind us on this. I think 2nd or 3rd team is more likely, but you make a fine case for Wemby.
I mean, Ant is a really good candidate. Jalen Brunson's going to be, I think, another good candidate.
He's going to be right there.
I'm worried about Embiid, as you noted, just playing enough games.
He's not going to play enough games.
Right, he's not. But he is a talent who is at that level. The big old school, the old stars, LeBron, Steph, KD. No, they're just not. They're not at that level anymore. So there's room for Ant qualifies for a couple of these young guys to kind of jump up into these spots, I think.
Yeah, for some of the older guys, I think 2nd and 3rd team is perfectly reasonable. But that first team is really tight, right? I mean, you've got 4 almost certain locks, and then after that, it's a dogfight for 5. So these are all good picks. All right, that's going to wrap up our NBA awards prediction show for today. But as I mentioned, we're back at it 5 days a week, gang. Come and join us every single day, noon Eastern, live on YouTube, 9 a.m. Pacific, and then we'll be in podcast form. You can find that wherever you get your podcast. We're going to be back tomorrow. We're going to do our team predictions. The Eastern Conference, Bill, was considerably easier to sort through than the Western Conference.
It was still hard, I thought.
Yeah, it was hard, but the Western Conference from like 6 to 11
13
is very, very, you went even deeper than I did, but 6 to 11 for certain was very difficult. So we're going to walk through all of that tomorrow. Come back and join us. We're very excited to be back 5 days a week. But for now, for our NBA insider, Bill Ryder, I am John Gonzalez. We thank you so much for tuning in, everybody. We'll see you on Tuesday.